In the last video, I explored the various features of the Aegean Sea, called an elongated bay of the Mediterranean Sea, including the Strait of Dardanelles, which connects the Aegean Sea to the Sea of Marmara, as well as the Black Sea by the Strait of Bosporus, the location of ancient Troy, near the entrance of the Strait of Dardanelles, Crete, the Dodecanese Islands, which includes the islands of Rhodes and Patmos, the Cyclades Islands, which includes Santorini and Delos, the island of Chios, and the island of Euboea and its neighbor Skyros. My name is Michelle Gibson. Now I am tracking the alignment to Delphi, an important religious, cultural, and social center of ancient Greece. The seat of the Pythia, depicted here in a sculpture at the Paris Opera attributed to the female Swiss sculptor Martello in 1870, and who was the high priestess of the Temple of Apollo in Delphi, as well as the oracle who was consulted about important decisions throughout the ancient classical world. And Delphi was believed to be the center of the world. This is the Omphalos Stone on the left, inside the museum at Delphi, a symbol for Delphi's status as the navel of the earth, with markings reminiscent of a dorje on the right, the symbol of Vajra in Tibetan Buddhism, a Sanskrit word which is said to mean thunderbolt, in a reference to a follower achieving enlightenment in a single lifetime, in a thunderbolt flash of indestructible clarity. And the Omphalos Stone at the Temple of Apollo in Delphi. Omphalos also had a meaning as a geodetic point of a master grid of electromagnetic energy around the earth. In Greek mythology, the king of the gods, Zeus, was said to have released two eagles at opposite ends of the world and commanded them to fly across the earth and meet at its center. It was at Delphi where the two eagles finally met. Zeus was the god of sky and thunder, and wielder of the thunderbolt. So what's the message being communicated here with the connection of the thunderbolts to Delphi, Zeus, and the dorje? It might have something to do with the understanding of the ancients of the electric universe and our direct relationship to it. Studied in depth in the present day by the Thunderbolts Project, and others who have studied the topic of the electric universe and the related topic of free energy. Ancient theaters can be found all over Greece, and Delphi was no exception, where the theater there overlooks the ruins of the Temple of Apollo. Interestingly, there are similar-looking amphitheaters in North America, like the amphitheater on Cameron's Bluff at Mount Magazine in Arkansas, which the Works Project Administration of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal gets the credit for building in 1939. There is also what is described as a gravitational aqueduct in Delphi that carries water to Athens. This stone bridge is located in a town in the vicinity of Delphi in Greece, as are these waterfalls. Out of curiosity, I looked up Delphi in the state of Indiana to see what I would find. Well, for one thing, it's the home of the Wabash and Erie Canal, which was said to have been in use starting in 1840. With at least one beautiful old stone bridge crossing it. And this is an old postcard of the Deer Creek Dam in Delphi, Indiana. The Aegean Roughing City Hall in Delphi, Indiana was said to have opened in 1865, which was the last year of the American Civil War, by the way. About 20 years later, the third floor of the building was turned into an opera house. Then we are told the opera house shut down in 1915 and fell into a state of decay. until its renovation and reopening 100 years later in 2015. Back to Delphi in Greece, it was the location of one of the 4 Panhellenic Games, which included both athletic and non-athletic events, and were called the Pythian Games. We are told this was the starting line of the Stadium of Delphi, which was located northwest of the theater in the highest part of the city and called one of the best preserved monuments of its kind. I remember first learning about black figure Greek art in the 6th grade, 1974 for me, when we studied ancient Greece, where we are taught that the white Greeks had a style called black figure in their pottery art and said to be reminiscent of silhouettes. So here's what this style looks like. Could this possibly mean something else quite different from an artistic style? Like the ancient Greeks were actually black and not white, as we have been taught? The ancient city of Delphi and its modern counterpart are situated on Mount Parnassus, described as a mountain of limestone. Limestone is classified as a carbonate sedimentary rock composed primarily of calcite and aragonite. Is this limestone a natural rock formation or ancient masonry? The etymology of the word Parnassus is said to be Luwian, the hieroglyphic language of the Lycians of southwestern Anatolia, derived from a word meaning temple. The Phaedriades are the pair of cliffs on the lower southern slopes of Mount Parnassus, which rise above Delphi. There is polygonal masonry at Delphi, like what you find in Cusco in Peru, another place called the Navel of the World, at the Coricancha, and Sacsayhuaman, just outside of Cusco, as well as at Edo Castle in Tokyo, Japan. This is also at Edo Castle. Polygonal masonry is defined as a technique wherein the visible surfaces of the stones are dressed with straight edges or joints, giving the block the appearance of a polygon. I first learned about amphictyonies, associations of 12 neighboring states or tribes formed around a religious center, from a presentation given by Christine Rohn titled 12 Tribe Nations, Sacred Number and the Golden Age, at the 2009 Megalithomania Conference in Glastonbury, England. She and John Michel co-authored a book of the same name. Among other things, they followed the Apollo-St. Michael alignment across countries and continents, all the way to Jerusalem in Israel. They discuss records and traditions of whole nations being divided into 12 tribes and 12 regions, each corresponding to one of the 12 signs of the zodiac and to one of the 12 months of the year, all formed around a sacred center. It stands to reason that these people would apply the same concepts of harmony, balance, beauty, sacred geometry, and aligning heaven and earth to building their communities and themselves that they applied to building all of the infrastructure of the earth. The most important amphictyony, we are told, was the Delphic amphictyony, or Amphictyonic League, centered around the Temple of Apollo in Delphi. What if we are talking about an arrangement like what you see pictured here of the 12 tribes of Israel occurring in a flower of life pattern from macro to micro, covering the surface of the earth? This information about amphictyonies helped to inform my belief that the 12 tribes of Israel were the basis for how civilization was laid out all over the earth, as well as finding information about lost tribes of Israel in diverse places, like the South Pacific. The Kuki in India. The Pashtun of Afghanistan and Pakistan. and Madagascar. There's another place near Delphi I would like to take a look at before I move on. The Hosios Lukos Monastery is southeast of Delphi and close to, if not on, the alignment I have been tracking. Hosios Lukos Monastery is one of the 3 monasteries in Greece listed as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, along with Neomone on the island of Chios, which I looked at in the last video, and Daphnion, northwest of Athens. It is located on the slopes of Mount Helicon, the home in Greek myth of the 9 Muses, the inspirational goddesses of literature, sciences, and the arts. This vaulting is in the interior of the Hosios Lukos Monastery, compared with the vaulting in the catacombs under the Paris Opera, and the underground vaulting that is found at what is called the Old Portuguese Fort on Iran's Hormuz Island in the Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf. After leaving Delphi, I started to track a circle alignment instead of a linear alignment. These cities and places in alignment are based upon sacred geometry contained within the Flower of Life pattern as depicted in this overlay, and can be found in lines and circles, as all sacred geometric shapes are found within the Flower of Life. The alignment I am now tracking enters the Ionian Sea and crosses over the islands of Atokos, Ithaca, and Kefalonia, which is the largest of the Ionian Islands of western Greece. The small island of Atokos is privately owned, but visitors are allowed to come here, and it is frequently visited by yachters, and is located just off the main shipping channel between Brindisi in Italy and Patras in Greece. Just like I found on the island of Skyros in the Aegean Sea, the water is so crystal clear on Atokos, it looks like the boats are floating on air. The island of Ithaca comes next. It is a regional unit of the Ionian Islands region, and its population in 2011 was a little over 3,000 people. Its capital is Vathi, also the main harbor of the island, which looks to be artificially made. With its masonry banks and artificial island. Modern Ithaca is generally identified as the home of Odysseus, whose 10-year-long adventure in returning to Ithaca after the fall of Troy is the subject of Homer's Odyssey. Kefalonia, just southwest of Ithaca, is the largest of the Ionian Islands and also a regional unit of the Ionian Islands region. The capital of Kefalonia is Argostoli, which it has been since 1757, and called one of the busiest ports in Greece, with its shaped shoreline and masonry banks, like those of Vathi on Ithaca. The ancient Greek temple-looking Phanari Lighthouse, or Lighthouse of Saints Theodore, in Argostoli, was said to have been built by the British in 1829. And the de Beausset Bridge in Argostoli was said to have been inspired in 1813 by the Swiss engineer Charles de Beausset, who became governor of the island in 1810 when the Republic of the Ionian Islands was under British patronage. The obelisk on an artificial island beside the bridge was said to have been erected to commemorate the British builders and patrons of the bridge. The castle of St. George is 4 miles or 7 kilometers southeast of Argostoli, above the village of Peratata. It was said to have been built in the 12th century AD by the Byzantines and improved by the Venetians. Apparently, Peratata, as Agios, was the capital of Kefalonia, until it was moved to Argostoli in 1757. Assos Castle, or fortress, is on Kefalonia, and was said to have been built on top of the Assos Peninsula by the Venetians in the 16th century AD to protect Assos village from pirates and/or a naval invasion. Before I close out this particular video, I would like to share what I found about the history of the Ionian Islands, of which there are 7 main islands, in the last few hundred years. I will start when the Ionian Islands were said to have become part of the Venetian Republic in 1500 AD. The Venetian Republic was also known as La Serenissima, or Most Serene Republic of Venice, described as a sovereign state and maritime republic. Then in 1797, the Treaty of Campo Formio was signed by Napoleon Bonaparte and Count Philippe von Cobenzzi as representatives of the French Republic and the Austrian monarchy, respectively. This treaty disbanded and partitioned the Venetian Republic by the French and the Austrians, and the Ionian Islands were awarded to France. At that time, the Ionian Islands became the short-lived French department of Ithaca, as it fell to the Russians in 1798 and was officially ended in 1802. Between the years of 1800 and 1807, the Ionian Islands were known as the Septinsular Republic under Russian and Ottoman rule after the Russian-Ottoman fleet defeated Napoleon Bonaparte. Then in 1807, Napoleon signed 2 agreements in the town of Tilsit in what was Prussia in East Germany, one between the Emperor Alexander I of Russia, and the second treaty was signed with Prussia, and the Ionian Islands were returned to France, becoming a French protectorate. Then in 1809, the British blockaded the Ionian Islands as part of the war against Napoleon. In September of that year, they hoisted the British flag on the island of Zakynthos, with Kefalonia and Ithaca soon surrendering. The British installed provisional governments here. The Treaty of Paris of 1815 recognized the United States of the Ionian Islands and established them as a British protectorate. Then, in 1864, the Ionian Islands were transferred back to Greece to become a full member of the Greek state when the British-backed Prince William of Denmark became King George I of the Hellenes in 1863. When King George I of the Hellenes was nearing the 50th year of his reign, he was assassinated in 1913 in Thessalonica, near the White Tower, by a socialist named Alexandros Chios, who said when he was arrested that he killed the king because the king had refused to give him money. So all along this alignment, I have found wars, treaties, partitions, regime changes, and assassinations by individuals of highly questionable mental health or politically or religiously motivated in our historical narrative. In a future video, I will be putting all of the information I have found regarding this subject along the way into one video because it illustrates some of the modus operandi by which the old world order was taken down and replaced with a new one. In the next video, I'm heading for the narrow Strait of Messina between the toe of the boot of the Italian peninsula and the island of Sicily, and the location where Odysseus would have encountered Scylla and Charybdis on his adventurous trip home from Troy.